Well, this is an update on my legal case. They've they pushed back the other charges I have where I'm in court with Ashley again. Um, in light of the fact that I took a psychological eval for the other case, and when I went in there, instead of telling the forensic examiner that I spoke to who did the psychological eval that I was being set up by the cops and that they had threatened me and all this other stuff, which essentially equates to my word against theirs. I brought him physical evidence, which is all a part of the actual psychological uh, of part of the psychological exam, or at least the final results to it. And here's the thing about it. Um, There are two interesting questions which is asked automatically on a psychological exam, which have to be determined by the examiner. One is whether or not I am criminally responsible, uh, to which the examiner doesn't feel that I'm criminally responsible. The other question to this is whether or not I can aid in my own defense. And the criminal examiner feels that I can aid in my own defense. Now, see, allow me to explain the reason for this. Uh, Christine Keller, the head prosecutor of Raleigh County, doesn't like that because what this man is essentially saying by answering those questions into affirmatives, that I'm not criminally responsible and that I am able to help in my own defense, is that he's saying that based on the examination he gave me and the evidence I gave him and in our discussion and everything else, that I am innocent and that being innocent, I am also sane. See, if I am if I am not criminally responsible for the charges, and I am unable to defend myself in court, then I am, of course, insane. I'm crazy. And my whole argument about the criminal conspiracy of the police officers in conjunction with the Reddens, the Kirks, the Lilies, and the prosecutor's office and everything else comes down to being fantasy, conspiracy theory. I might as well be talking about shape-shifting lizard people from the fourth dimension who live under the earth, and flying saucers and the Illuminati and New World Order and all this other stuff. But what I'm saying is actually rational. It's prevalent looking at the physical evidence to it. And when I go see the next person to get my little psychological exam, I'm going to give them the same physical evidence. I'm not going to walk in there and say, hey, this is what's going on, and be seen as, potentially lying or being crazy or anything like that, and giving the flights of fantasy about grand conspiracies and everything else against me. I will, however, produce physical evidence showing that at the very least, the West Virginia State Police is engaged in a criminal conspiracy to deprive me of civil rights. And apparently, the Raleigh County Prosecutor's Office does not like the idea that I gave that evidence or whatever. And according to Christine Keller, she somehow feels that I was able to influence the forensic examiner and win him over to my side, and that he is not he is not objective. The reality of the matter is, when you objectively look at physical evidence of a attempt to falsely arrest a person, falsely accuse a person, and deprive them of their right to due process of law by covering up and concealing and trying to get rid of and destroy exculpatory evidence, which is evidence which can be used to prove your innocence, then the truth is there. You if you objectively see the truth, then it's the truth. If you look at the truth with a certain bias, then you have to insert whatever lies you want to support your bias, or you can look at it with a certain bias and then admit that your bias is wrong. Either way, it's kind of hard to deviate from the fact that there's physical evidence. And apparently, I'm winning the case without ever going to trial because she wanted me to go see a second psychological exam under a different forensic examiner. And my attorney originally told her that he didn't feel that I would be up to it. But when he discussed with me, I told him, yeah, I'd go ahead and do it for the simple fact that I want to get my phone records. See, my phone records supply more evidence. So whether or not, this guy shows up and says, well, he's batshit crazy, or he's guilty and he's sane, or he's potentially guilty and he's sane, it doesn't matter because I can still use the previous examination, and there's still the fact that they allow me to get more physical evidence to reinforce what I'm saying. So, the new forensic examiner might very well see evidence of FBI agent Michael Hayden's involvement, which kind of tilts things in a whole nother angle. And this is going to come up in court since the whole fighting, the me having to get Mingo Winters on tape, all of that that's been released so far was all to get these few little pieces of paper here. Some of these are correspondence between attorneys, but most of it is actually Redden's phone records. And some of them actually include text messages. Transcripts of text messages brought off the site to whatever. And the funny thing about it is the text messages even mention, the text messages go so far as to even mention that that we were supposed to meet on New Year's, and when the phone records go back to New Year's, but at the same time, the text messages don't start until the 27th of January. So there's a gaping hole there. And then looking in lieu of the other evidence of the officers fabricating evidence, this could be a common mistake. This could be a simple mistake made in good faith. But when you look at the other case of where they brought additional charges against me, threatened me with additional charges, the whole thing from the job warrant covered up the fact that there was exculpatory evidence in that case, took evidence out of a forensics lab, under a search warrant from Kanawha County, which we got to get the search warrant. We got to get hold of Kanawha County and get a hold of that search warrant. The entire issue comes under severe scrutiny. There's tracks all through the system. The people at the forensics lab aren't going to be responsible for any tampering with the evidence, and they want themselves to be clear, which is why they have that had to go get a second search warrant. The physical evidence that they didn't know about. In fact, just to give everyone a little tidbit of information relating to ninjutsu, Sun Tzu said all warfare is based on deception. Well, that's true. See, I already had the file. I already have copies of the files. Most of the files, not all of them, but I have a good bit of copies of the files that are on those computers. I had them stashed away somewhere. Since no one ever talked to me, no one knew where they were. My mom didn't even know where they were. So when they did take my stuff, they didn't really get anything of any value. And there were backup copies left with other people, just in case. And so my whole little thing of getting in contact with the state police, filing complaints, and everything else served three different purposes. One of which was to create a precedence for the other state police covering them up, namely Lieutenant Deeds from the Office of Professional Standards. So I went to the governor, went to Captain White, and everything else. Even my whole threatening to go to the superintendent of the state police on Captain White for not doing anything about Lieutenant Deeds, which pushed them into doing this, it served a purpose. See, if they would have done nothing, then it's hard to explain. Actually, no, it's not. Look, see, I didn't have the evidence I needed to prove they were trying to cover things up. So what I did was I created a situation to where they were prompted to cover things up. Now, if they didn't cover things up, then there would be no evidence of them covering things up. Instead, what they did was they covered things up. And carried out their threats of false charges and everything else. So here's where the situation comes down to. Rule 62-2-12 states that they only have 3 terms to indict me. They have to indict me on the child porn charges by February. If they don't, they have to give me my computers back and I walk. If they do indict me, we're going to go to court, and they're going to be faced with a whole fiasco of trying to explain how come there's all this stuff on the internet and everything else that they're aware of where the cops threaten me, which means they're, proof the officers acted in bad faith. Which, once you get into that, it makes that hole in this evidence not an issue of a good faith common mistake, but in fact a bad faith criminal act done under color of law. And see, the thing that scares them about me is that I do know the law, that I made it a point to go and learn about the law and everything else, and that I'm well aware of what the law allows me to do. I'm also well aware of the fact that, to be honest, my life's in danger. More often than not, the easiest way to deal with it is to let some little brat bastard out here on the street take a shot at me, and I defend myself. They're going to falsely arrest me under whatever color of law bullshit they want. And then if I resist arrest, I'm a criminal, except for that whole issue with Bad Elk versus the U.S., which says I have the right to resist a false arrest. And it gets even more interesting because Sergeant Bailey is actually on record. I might play that at the end of this video. I haven't decided yet. Where he told me he was going to get a warrant for John Nathan Lilly, the guy who jumped me with this Jeffrey Alden guy. And even then, you want to know how stupid these people are? All right, I friended Brian Resner on Facebook for no other reason than he was friends with these people. I made a comment about him on YouTube, posted the video and everything else on Facebook after having multiple debates with him concerning gun rights, just so these people would jump on there and start attacking my character and everything else. And it played out very interestingly because Michelle Jennings got up there and denied being related to Mary Jennings and denied knowing or being related to any police officers, much the same way that Amanda Kirk had on YouTube in another case. And see, why are they... Think about it. If you were a law-abiding citizen, why would you deny knowing police officers or being friends with the police or having relatives who are police officers? Unless you're not a law-abiding citizen, unless you have friends and associates who are criminals that, you don't want them to know that you have this connection to law enforcement. And maybe you're setting these people up or trying to set these people up, and there's something going on here. And so it's kind of interesting. Myself personally, if I was her, I'd be more concerned of the fact that I've very blatantly accused her and her mother and her brother of pimping out her 13-year-old niece, and I'd be more interested in trying to defend against that than my association with the police, because, if you're a law-abiding citizen, who cares if you know the cops? Yeah. But, yeah, whatever. I just figured I'd give you guys this little update and make it a little interesting thought for everyone, just so everyone knows how everything's going. Thanks for checking in.